An apron tutorial, here we go. I do hope this will help. This will be a whole series where I will walk you through calculating pattern, cutting pieces, construction, and so on. But first up, in this episode, we're going to talk about fabrics. For an apron like this, you can go with a range of materials. I'd advise for cotton or linen, for environmental reasons as well as comfort and practicality. Going into the benefits of these two materials is a topic for a whole other long video, just trust me on this one. Cotton, linen. You want a woven fabric, not a stretchy one. What kind of weave is less important? I made mine in a very plain weave cotton. You know, the kind you have in good old basic bed linens, basically. When it comes to density, in fabrics we talk about GSM, grams per square meter. The higher the number, the thicker the fabric. This one, for example, has a GSM of 220. Well, this one has a GSM of 70, so this one is just a third of this one. It's sort of see-through, you can see my hand through it. 220, 70. Both of these could work depending on what you're going for. This would be a nice sturdy work apron. This would be a dainty decorative pretty apron. I made mine in a fabric that's around 150, so between these, closer to this. 150 is very medium weight. Now, where to get the fabric? You could of course get it from a fabric store. I cannot recommend one because I don't really know what's outside of Sweden. But what I can recommend is not going to a fabric store, but going secondhand. You can usually find old bed linens, curtains, tablecloths, other great materials in secondhand shops that would otherwise be thrown away. You might even have old bed linens at home, that's also great. Both options are much nicer for the environment than buying virgin fabric. If you are buying new fabric from a fabric store, you're going to need to wash it first. Natural materials shrink in the wash, and you want that to happen before you start making your garment instead of after you've made it, because it will end up smaller. So pop it in the washing machine, wash it, and then iron it, for Christ's sake. You do not want to work with wrinkly fabric, trust me. Okay then, part 2 of making an apron. We're going to measure all of these pattern pieces, and they are including 1 centimeter seam allowance. I'll make some sort of written instructions once I'm done with this series, so you can have all the measurements, but you can also just press the video and pause it if you want to take a look. The pattern pieces that we're working with is this flap, which will look basically like a slanted rectangle. We have the skirt part, which is just one ginormous rectangle. We have the waistband, which is just one super long rectangle. And then we have 2 shoulder straps, which are also 2 rectangles. So all in all, you'll have 5 pattern pieces. These are my measurements. I am 165 tall, my bust is 98 centimeters, and my waist is 85 as a reference point. We're going to start with the waistband. It's going to be 12 centimeters wide, and the length of this will be your waist plus 115 centimeters, which for me in total is 200 centimeters long. This excess is for the bow in the back, so this should work for all sizes, this calculation. You also have 2 shoulder straps. They are also going to be 12 centimeters wide. And here comes the tricky part, because this can differ quite a lot between a lot of people. So to get this one, tie some sort of ribbon around your waist where you want the waistband to sit. Then take a measuring tape and measure from that waistband across your back to where it's going to sit. For me that's 88, but I'm going to cut quite a lot extra just in case. So 88 plus some extra, just let's say 100 in total. Better to cut some off than to have too little in the end. Then we have the skirt part, which is one ginormous rectangle. I made mine 96 centimeters tall, but 11 of those centimeters will disappear into the hem and the 2 tucks. So the final length will be 85. If you want it longer or shorter, measure how long you want it, and then just add 11 centimeters. Mine is 144 wide. And the reason for this is simply that my fabric had a sort of nice selvage. The selvage is the edge of the fabric when it's produced. And since mine was rather neat, I decided to keep that so I didn't have to hem the sides. So the width of my skirt is the width of the entire fabric. You can make it more narrow or wider depending on what you prefer. So my waist is 85, 144, so it's less than double my width if you want to adjust it depending on your size. And then we have the little flap thing, which is shaped like this, but the wider bottom is going to get gathered. So in the end, it will actually look more like this. Now, this one is tricky to calculate because it depends on how curvy you are, how flat you are. My measurements, in case you happen to be my size, is I have 22.5 centimeters at the top. I'm so sorry about the upcoming mess. The original file of the next part somehow got lost, so I had to download this one from Instagram with subtitles and everything. And as you'll see later in the video, I also made some mistakes with the calculations of the flap. So follow the written instructions in the document and you'll get the right measurements. But just have it here as well. 20.5 centimeters at the top, 26 at the bottom, and 24 centimeters tall. Ignore the other measurements in the video. Sorry. So 4 centimeters difference between top and bottom. So this lower part is actually wider than this part, but it's gathered. And that's what creates this sort of curved shape where it's both more narrow at the top and at the bottom than it is in the middle. So if you're flatter, you'll need less gathers. If you're more busty than I am, you may need to exaggerate this. So it's hard to calculate, and I get it. But it's such a small piece of fabric that you can simply take your fabric and play around with it. So hold it up against the mirror and try to figure out, like, how wide do I want this? What would be a nice curvature? Cut a piece that's slightly too large and then just cut away bit by bit until you reach a size that's good for you. So how do you know how much fabric you're going to need? Let's calculate. I usually draw out my fabric like this. Say the fabric is 144 as my fabric was. Then I'm going to place the pattern pieces. So for example, we put the skirt first. That was 96 centimeters. I'm going to put the waistband here. That was 12. But this was supposed to be 2 meters, means that we're lacking about half of it. So we also need a bit here. Then we have the 2 shoulder straps that are also supposed to be 12 wide, so 24 in total for those. And then I can fit the last flap somewhere here. So that means I need 96 centimeters plus 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12. 12 times 4 equals 48. Plus 96 equals 144. Ironically, so you want a square that is as wide as it is long. For my size, you might need a bigger one, obviously. Mistakes to avoid when you're calculating your pattern is underestimating. Get fabric that's just a little bit bigger than you think you need, especially because it will shrink in the wash. Cut the waistband and the shoulder straps longer than they need to be, and you can trim off the excess at the ends. Make the flap slightly bigger and you can trim away. Mistakes to avoid. Making things too small. Try it on while you're sewing as well to make sure it's the right size as you figure it out. Let's go part 3. Cutting the fabric. You can of course use a measuring tape and chalk, lay the fabric out and measure everything and try to get straight lines. But if you're working with linen or cotton, I prefer to do it other ways to get perfectly straight lines. If you're using a linen fabric, I prefer doing the drawn thread method. I have a description of that in my previous tutorial on how to make a historical shift, so I'm not going to go through that again. But I'm making this apron out of cotton, plain weave cotton, which means there's such a nice lazy way of doing this. Look, I have a scrap piece of fabric. You see, we have a very nice straight line here. If I want to make this square, I cut a little bit and then you rip. And the fabric will always rip straight. And it's so nice when you're making a project that's just rectangles, because you can just snip and rich. Super quick, and it's super straight, unlike me. So when I say plain weave cotton, what I mean is that it's woven. So the threads go like up and down and the next thread goes opposite. Does this make sense? And that means that when you pull on it, it will want to rip straight along the lines because physics. So I've drawn how I want to place the pattern pieces according to the fabric I have left. Along this length, I'm going to do the waistband. So I simply measure the 12 centimeters that I want, cut, and then tear. And I'm going to measure how long I want it, cut, and tear. And then there will be a point where these 2 tears meet. And I just tear very carefully until they meet at the corner. And now I have a strip of fabric that's ready for the waistband. And I'll keep doing that for all the pattern pieces. This one is the only one that has 2 edges that aren't straight. These are my queer edges. So I'm gonna tear this one as a strip that is as wide as the bottom, and then I will cut with scissors, the slanted parts. So flap piece, right now it's a rectangle, 4 centimeters has to go here, so 2 centimeters on each side. So what I'm going to do is just fold it in the middle, measure 2 centimeters at the top, then grab a ruler or something to mark a line down to the outer corner. And then we cut. You can make this even more slanted if you want to. As you see, mine is a bit big. I think I might actually play around with just cutting 1 centimeter more off each side. So here are the pattern pieces you should have by now. 1 big rectangle for the skirt, 1 long waistband, 2 shoulder straps, and then the little flap in the middle. Welcome to part 4, sewing the flap and the shoulder straps. We're going to start by ironing our shoulder straps. First, you fold it in half and iron it. Then you open it up and you fold each side in towards the middle. And then you iron it again. And then you fold it in the middle again, making sure the edges are neatly aligned, and iron it a 3rd time. Now you should have a shoulder strap that is 4 centimeters wide. And you repeat on the other one. After that, we're going to take our flap and hem the upper edge of it. You fold it double, you pin it down, and then sew a straight stitch. Unless you happen to have cut it against a nice selvage like I have. In that case, you don't need to hem it. Now, confession time. I made a mistake in an earlier part and calculated the front flap too big. So I'm going to have to cut away 2 centimeters at the bottom of it. And this is why we keep trying things on as we're sewing. Once we have the final shape of this flap, it's time to decorate, if you want to do so. I'm going to figure out where I want my lace, and then pin it down, and then stitch it in place with 1 seam along each edge of each piece of lace. After all of this, I'm going to do 2 lines of gathering stitches at the bottom of this flap. I simply set my machine to 4mm stitch length and then sew 2 straight lines. And once I've done that, I'm going to knot the ends of the threads so I can pull on the seam later without risking pulling the threads out. After that, I'm going to insert the flap into the shoulder straps so that the 1 centimeter seam allowance is between the layers of the straps. Then I'm going to pin it in place all the length of the strap. And then we just stitch a straight seam along this edge, leaving the last bit of the strap unfinished for now. It will all make sense later, trust me. And this is what it looks like for now. Part 5, we're going to gather the top into the waistband. The waistband needs to be in 2 parts, so we'll cut the 12 centimeters that we have in half, leaving us with 2 pieces that are 6 centimeters wide. Next, we iron it to have a flat material to work with. Then we take one of the waistband pieces and mark the center of it, and also the center of the flap. And then we pin those center points together, right sides towards each other. We're going to gather down to 17 centimeters, not counting the strap, so just the flap bit. So I'm going to measure and mark those points on the waistband, and then pin those points to the flap as well. Now I'm going to find the center of the spaces between the pins by grabbing each piece like this, pulling away from each other until the pins meet. That gives me the center of both the flap and of the waistband. And I'm going to take those centers and pin them together. Then I'll repeat this process until I've pinned the whole thing with even spaces to gather in. This helps me make sure the gathers are distributed fairly evenly. I'm using a pin to smooth the gathers so they all lie in nice lines. You don't have to be this thorough, but I enjoy neat straight gathers. After that, we simply stitch a straight seam 1 centimeter from the edge. After that, you need to remove the pins and pull out the gathering thread. This might leave small marks where the thread used to be, but they usually disappear with some gentle rubbing or some ironing. Next, we take our second piece of waistband, and then we're going to sandwich the flap between the 2 of them and pin along the upper edge of the waistband from one end all the way to the other. And then, of course, stitch it in place, still with 1 centimeter seam allowance. And we're going to leave a little bit of the ends unstitched for now, and you'll see why later. After that, we open the waistband up and press the seam allowance. Then fold it double and press it again to get a nice crisp edge. Part 6, fixing the skirt part of the apron. We're going to start by hemming the sides of the apron, unless you cut it so the sides are neat selvages like on my previous one. In that case, just skip this hemming. If you don't have a nice selvage, fold each side down double and then pin it in place and stitch a straight seam. After that, we're going to hem the lower edge. You're going to fold down 1 centimeter and then fold it again 5 centimeters this time. I do a rather wide hem for both decoration and structure. Pin it in place and stitch. Then we're going to do the tucks at the bottom. A tuck is basically just a fabric folded double, stitched and then ironed down. The point of tucks is mostly for decoration, but they also add a bit of structure to the bottom, just like the wide hem does. My tucks are 1 centimeter wide. I'm going to measure where I want them. Let's use my old apron to show this. I'm going to first measure from the bottom of the skirt up to where I fold the fabric for the first tuck, which is 8 centimeters. I'm marking that line on the new apron, and then I'll pin the fold securely and stitch a straight seam 1 centimeter from the edge. After that, we press the tuck down towards the hem, before repeating the whole process on the second tuck. On my old apron, the fold of the second tuck is 4.5 centimeters from the fold of the first tuck. So let's draw that out on the fabric. And then fold it and pin it and stitch it. Iron it. And now we have a pretty bottom. Next up is gathering this piece into the waistband, the same way we did with the upper part. First, run 2 lines of gathering stitches, then put your half apron on and decide how far you want the skirt to go. Mark that spot and then find the same spot on the other side of your waistband. Then pin the sides of your skirt part to those markings and make sure to only pin it against the half of the waistband that is towards your stomach, the back half, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, pin it to that one. Finding the centers, matching those, then finding the center between the actual center and the sides, pin that, and then the center of those smaller sections, and so on and so forth until you have pinned it into smaller sections. Then gather it, pin it in place, stitch a straight seam, and then we're done for today. Part 7, the last part. This is what it looks like right now. As you can see, we need to start with making sure the waistband is stitched together. We do this by folding up the 1 centimeter seam allowance and then pinning the 2 sides together. We're going to pin this all the way across the whole waistband. And when you come to the end, you can either fold them in square and pin them together, or you can angle them. I'm sure there's a much better way of doing this, but I'm just going to fold it in and try to make this work. Once it's all pinned in place, we just top stitch the whole thing, including top stitching the first fold that we had stitched on the inside. Top stitching is when you sew a seam on the outside to hold the layers down. After that, we just need to finish the shoulder straps. Put the apron on, then mark where you want the shoulder straps to sit. You can pin only one of them and use it to measure out the second one to get them even. Then take the apron off and mark the angle of the end and the outlines of the area where the 2 straps overlap. Cut off the excess of the shoulder straps. Transfer the markings to the other half of the skirt. Take the ends of the shoulder straps and carefully cut away some of the inner layers of them to make the next step less bulky. Then fold the ends in and pin them down. Then take the shoulder straps and pin them to the waistband, making sure they cross in the back and making sure the strap lies flat and hasn't accidentally gotten twisted around, which it did for me and I didn't realize until now. So I have to cut the angle again and redo the last part. Anyway, once you have the straps pinned, put the apron on just to double check that it's all good, so you're not like me. Then stitch the straps in place. I like to do 2 rounds of the square and then a cross in the middle. After all of this, we give it all a nice iron and then we're done. Now we have an apron. Thanks for watching all of this, if you did. Guess you did if you're watching this part. Sorry about the messy bits along the way. I'm still figuring tutorials out and I've been tired and messy. If you ever do make your own apron based on this, I'd love to see it. Feel free to send me a DM with a picture or tag me in a comment or something. And if you have any questions, I'm always here to answer them. Send me a message. And good luck. I don't know how to end things. Bye.